I'm the Business Transformation Consultant Manager for Optimus. We're going to do this session this morning, and it's a session that was done before. It's the Introduction to Human Resources, Part 1. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to run through the functionalities, the logistics, and some of the tips behind the human resource module in Microsoft Dynamics GP. So I'm going to touch on the logistics. I'm going to look at the applicant and the employee information that can be captured, how we utilize the Microsoft suite, the Office suite especially, in synchronization with Microsoft Dynamics GP. We're going to look at some inquiries, some reports, how to generate it, how they may be helpful in assisting your organization. And then we'd look at some tips and tricks we can use, or some things you need to pay attention to when you're doing integration of data. Okay, so I have you guys on listen only mode, so you're muted. However, there is the chat that you can access, and I will see your messages. And we do have the option of sending emails after the session. In previous sessions, I kept it interactive. This one, I'm not doing that. So please feel free, communicate to me after. Any questions, we can do one-on-one sessions. I can follow up with answers and replies to your emails, etc. And we have the entire Optimus team at your disposal, so you can get answers from multiple places. So with that said, I'd like to begin. Yenny, if we're not recording, can we start recording now? And I know that you all are seeing my screen, so we're going to start now. This is the home page for Microsoft Dynamics GP, and it's tied to a specific role right now. So your home page is showing the HR information. So you're seeing the payroll and the HR for each of the tiles, with the payroll minimized and the HR expanded. This is something that you'd see based on your user profile. I am logged in as the sysadmin profile, so I have access to everything. So what I did was I minimized the ones that I don't want, and that's why the screen looks like a clutter still, because I have access to everything. You, as the HR user, will have access only to what has been granted for your role. Now, in my sessions, what I usually do is go through the path so that you can see how you will find the different options based on the tiles and ribbons, etc. Of course, Microsoft Dynamics GP has created this homepage for several versions now, where you can simply have it customized and click, avoiding you having to navigate through the different options. So I'm going to do it both ways so that you can get accustomed to it if you have not been using GP before. So Microsoft Dynamics GP has segmented its functionality in several different ways. The setup section would be where you'd go in to put your configurations, especially modular configurations. Your card section is where you would host all of your master data, so all of your, in this case, customers, vendors, items, and for us today, applicants and employees. Then you have your transaction section, where you do your day-to-day transactions on the different aspects of Microsoft Dynamics GP. And something I usually highlight, it's very extensive for like purchasing and sales, the amount of things that you have to do, as opposed to human resources, where it's once you have the information in, captured and cleaned, your day-to-day transaction moves from data entry tasks and transaction tasks to more analysis and improvement of the data that you have in your system. So you'd notice how small the section is for your human resources transactions. And we'll go back into this later into details. We have the inquiry section. And under your inquiry section, you will be doing ad hoc inquiries that are meant to be mostly internal. They tend to be very frequent. You need to look at an employee, you need to get some basic information for an employee, you can do that. You need to do a quick query, you can do that. The information is not meant to go to a third party, nor is it meant to be documented for recording and referencing later. Although you can do that in inquiries. If you need information to go to a third party or it needs to form the basis of a bigger report, then you need to use the report section where that Microsoft Dynamics GP allows you to extract the information out, put it into a meaningful format, put it into a format that works for your organization in terms of putting logos and stuff, etc., and communicate with a third party, or to have it for records basis. So let's go into some of these into more details. So under Microsoft Dynamics GP, Tools, Setup, Human Resources will give you the list of all the things that you need to maintain in your module for human resources. Whether it be a new implementation or a continuation of the use of Microsoft Dynamics GP HR, this is where you would go in to put any configuration changes to your module. It also allows you to create things like how are you going to handle your accruals, which is under attendance. How are you going to handle, or are you going to create new benefits, health plans, etc. You have extra fields and user-defined fields, and these are very helpful because even though Microsoft Dynamics GP has a lot of fields to capture a lot of information, most industries capture information that is specific to that industry. And therefore, if it's not in your basic window for Microsoft Dynamics GP, you will need to create additional fields to capture the information that is meaningful to you. This is where you utilize the user-defined fields as well as the extra fields. Okay? So in my user-defined fields, I have 5 string fields, 5 date fields, 5 currency fields, and 5 integer fields, of which I can use. So these are fields that have no data, have not been defined, and you are now able to enable them, as I've done with this string, and I've decided to track a vehicle number. So you can enable them, label them, and then they will show up in your employee maintenance screen, so you can use that data. And yes, you can use that data to pull on reports. You can use it to filter on reports and inquiries. So we're going back again. Now, let's start with the Human Resource tab. This is where you specify if you would like the system to control your employee numbering. So do I want the system to auto-assign an employee ID? I need to have this checked off. And what is my next employee ID? So once I set this up and I say OK, it will have my EMP002 as the next number assigned. So the next employee that I hire will get this number. This number, of course, will increase by 1 for every employee that is being added, and the system will maintain that and govern that for you. I'll use this window down here instead of going through the navigation so you can see the flexibility in options. And I clicked on Human Resource. So we just did this window. The next window is organization. Now this is a particularly important window. This window not only matches the information or clarifies the information for each employee, but it builds your organization chart at the same time. So you do need to define, or you do need to maintain your division. Now your organization may be a structure where there are not multiple divisions, there may be one division. You need to still specify and say main, your departments, the positions, the location, and the supervisor. The supervisor and the location are not as important as the first three. So you must have a division, and this helps most with the tree structure in your organization. Then you must have your department belonging, of course, to the divisions. And then you have your positions, which are tied to your employee, who are tied to your department. So my division setup is very simple. And for those of us who are accustomed to using GP, you'd know that the fields that are highlighted bold and in black or red, depending on your user preference setup, are required fields. So you must populate this field or these fields before you can save or post or move forward with the transaction or the information that you're capturing. So I have main, and in my main, once I have set up a code and I've set up my description, which is the division description here, I can pretty much save and move forward. However, in the interest of being complete, I would advise that you put addresses, because it can help later on in reports, letter writing, etc. Addresses for each division if you have multiple divisions. And in my division window, I also have extra fields. So if there is a need to capture additional information for that division, you have the window here where you can enable that. Okay. So how this would be done is in my extra fields, I'll show you in a couple of minutes. So keep this window in mind. This is under divisions. In my extra fields, I will define what my extra fields for my division window would look like, and they would show up inside here. So this screen that we're seeing here allows us to capture the data that we would have previously set up in our extra fields for the division in this case. Okay. So that's division. The department is similar. However, you capture less information. You don't need addresses for that. So I will need to create a department code, and I'm selecting the ones that are here before. However, if I needed to create a new one, it's simply a matter of typing in and saving. Okay, so we don't want to do that, so I'm going to click clear. So some examples: administration, construction, installation, purchase and receiving, sales, etc. So you'd set up your department to align with what your actual department setups are like. Position. My positions are the positions of the employees in my organization, of course. With my position setup, I simply need to have a code and a description, and if I have the information, I can then build the remainder of my card for my positions. This is not assigning positions yet to an employee. This is simply creating the position. So if I had a position such as sub-foreman, I can then, and again, it depends on if you have the information in. I can set up classes for my equal employment opportunities. I can break down those classes and I can assign it to a position. I can assign my position to whom, or I can allocate whom this position reports to, or which other position this position reports to. So I do the link between supervisor and subordinates. So all of this allows me, as I'm building, it allows me to create my organization tree. Review type, I can also assign it on my position level. So all of my technical staff will get reviewed every 2 weeks. All of my managerial staff will get reviewed every quarter. I can specify this simply by 1, creating my review types, and 2, assigning it to a position on this window. My skill set, which I'll also go into later again, is a skill set is a combination of different skills formed in one group. I can use that type of information to attach it to my positions so I can control who should have what type of skills based on the position they hold in the organization. So once I build my skill sets, I can assign it to a position here. Now, once I have all of these relationships built or preset, and I assign my position to each employee that it relates to, that's a host of information getting connected together. So you can see how reports start to make sense, how it's easy to formulate reports based on the type of information that you'll be capturing. And I hope by now you start understanding why you need to capture all of this set of information. Because the premise that GPHR is sitting on is once you use the information, you need to capture it. Once you capture it, you're able to analyze it. Once you analyze it, you're able to report on it. Once you have it in reports and you can analyze it, then you can make much better and more timely decisions. And that is the premise under which Microsoft Dynamics GP operates on. Or I should say on top of. So that was your positions. The location, which is less important to the organization, however, it does have a lot of value, is the physical place or area where the employees or the different employees report to. So if your organization is structured in such a way where the staff pretty much reports to work and they're located there for the majority of their daily tenure, then I can assign those staff or resources to particular specific areas in the organization, multiple sites, etc. I can capture that here. So it helps for reporting. It helps anyone at any point in time to be able to have access to find out where an employee should be or could be. And it also helps with your organization tree, depending on how detailed or how granular you'd like to go. Then your supervisor. This is another way because you also had in the position section where you can show the reporting too. This is another way where you can track your supervisors in your employee pool. So I can have supervisor codes, and this way I will be able to pull reports based on all my supervisors. So if there's a need to do that, then you can utilize this field. Okay. Moving forward. So that's your organization section. Now, once we have done the organization allocation and you have assigned your positions, departments, divisions, especially to your employees, we have the Organization Explorer, which allows you to see your organization tree in a graphical representation. So under my main division, I will have my departments. In this case, I only have one. Under my admin department, I would have my position. And here, holding that position, I can see my employee. Okay. So imagine in your organization with your divisions, your departments, your positions, being assigned to your employee, and then seeing this expand. So simply by opening this window, you can look and see how your organization is structured. You can see who reports to whom, you can see where they can be located, and at any point in time, you can get a graphical look at your entire organization. So that is one of the benefits of using this organization tab here, which then extends to your division, department, positions, etc. Okay, so we have the applicant user-defined fields. Now I have not touched any applicant window, so I'm going to have to jump across a bit and open up the applicant window. Now the applicant window looks a lot like your employee window. It captures more or less the same information. So someone applies to your organization. This is where you would need to capture that information. And again, everything that's highlighted in red is a required field. So I need to have my last name, my first name. I'm going to pull up one so that you can see it. I need to have my last name, my first name, the date of the application, any additional information that I can hold. And I want you all to pay particular attention to your social security number field. When an applicant is applying to you, they're not required to give you that number. And this number would vary depending on the country. So social security number is applicable in some places throughout the Caribbean and the United States and some places in South America, I believe. However, places in the Caribbean may use something like a national insurance number, which we can replace this social security number field to say national insurance number, etc. And we can change the format in which this number is represented. So getting back to my point, where an applicant does not need to put that information in the application. However, an employee would need to have that information in. So therefore, if I look at my employee tab, you'll see that my social security number is a required field. Now, when we move an applicant to an employee status, and I'll show you how, one of the very few information that we would need to amend the file with would be the social security number. So let's say we did not have it here because they did not give it to us. That's not a problem. However, when we convert them to an employee, then we need to get that number and put it in. So let's explore the applicant field while we're here, the applicant window while we're here. We have the basic information that we need, so you must populate those. You will populate the person's address, the gender, the ethnic origin, age, which is in a band, any additional information that can be captured here that will go under the employees, the HR section of your employee tab, you can capture it inside here. Requisition number. How this works is if you have your managers or your departments doing requisitions for positions, so there's a vacancy and they would like to make a requisition to HR to get an employee for that vacancy, they can maintain a requisition system and reference the number here to this applicant. That's if it's needed. So when a vacancy comes up, a requisition can be done. The requisition will have this type of information. If it's open, close, and hold immediate, that's the status. If it's an internal, what is the internal post date? Internal close date, opening date, this is to the regular public, who's the recruiter. So I can have all of this information populated by either the department manager or even a request forwarded to the HR staff, and the HR staff populate this. But I can create a requisition for a position in the organization, and when the applicants apply and the information is captured, I can say, okay, this applicant is suitable for this department, therefore I can use them as a possibility for this requisition number, and I can select a requisition number from here. Okay, so that's how this works. If it permits that you have an idea, you have the plan as to where this applicant can fit into the organization, or if they're applying for a specific job, then you can attach things like which division they're applying for, which department, what position, and where they would be specified. Now, if you're able to capture this information from the application level or the applicant's information level, then it makes it that much easier if this applicant is successful and you're going to hire them. So we're talking about hiring them. Hiring an applicant is simply by coming down to this section here under your go to and clicking hire, which would then capture all the information that you have already gotten from the applicant. And the system, based on what we have set up, would then assign the employee number. You do have the option to edit it at this point. You can put in some information here. You must put in your hire date, which is the effective date that you've hired them. And then you save. So by doing that, I have just hired this employee. Oh, I actually put this person as an employee already. So that would have effectively hired the person, thereby making them now an employee. Perfect. An employee, and you can now start capturing all of their information. So you would no longer be seeing them under the applicant window. Where you would have to find them would be under the employee window. So before I go further, let me show you some other things that you can get, or some things that you can use when you're capturing the applicant's information. The cost. So you have a position, you have advertised the position or communicated that the position needs to be filled, you have applications coming in. If you have applicants who are, let's say, not of the country, or there are costs involved in interviewing that person or hiring that person, you can capture that cost here. So is there traveling? Do you have to pay for the person to travel to come to the interview? Do you have to pay for lodging? Is there moving fees that you are responsible for? This still comes back to the organization's responsibility. So if these are costs that you need to track for your applicants, then this is the window where you would track that information. Okay. Some other windows that you can use under applicants would be education. So you've received a CV or a resume. It will no doubt have the educational background and details. This is where you capture that in relation to the applicants. Okay, so free text, years, degrees, GPA, you can populate all of that in. And for each line, I have my notes. And the importance of the notes is that it's, again, free text. So you can put in your notes, put in any additional information that you need, and certificates and proof of education can be attached, scanned and attached to the employee file, or in this case, the applicant's file. So I click on attach, I find the file where it is, I attach it, and it's then attached to this record for this applicant throughout my system forever. And when I move this applicant across to an employee, this information moves across with him or her. Interviews. So we're going to conduct an interview for an applicant. This is where we would capture the information of that interview. And this is where we can plan the interview also. So we have several interview types that you can set up in the system, and you can choose which type of interview it would be. I can set an interview date, and then based on the type of interview it is and how you measure different characteristics that you're looking for in the interview, you can make your notes and you can have a weighted score. And this is again attached to your applicant. You can specify the position that you would be interviewing for. It would be attached to the employee. You can create new interview types. I'll save it here. And you can have that information attached to your employee. Offers. So I've interviewed the applicant. I would like to make an offer. This, of course, would mean bringing several components together. So I am prepared to make an offer to John Doe for my company to the position of specified. If there's a shift system, now notice it's not a required field, but if there were a shift system in place and it's something that you can specifically assign to the employee, you can, or the potential employee, you can do that. Here you specify the salary that you're offering, the frequency of the salary, put in a signature, title. Now this, of course, is information that you're capturing to start doing communication. So signature line would be your signature. If you had a graphical signature, you can put it in. You can put in your initials here, which is what I usually do. I put your name. The title of the person authorized to communicate this information to the applicant. And other benefits, you can start attaching benefits here. Okay. You must specify a start date because it is a hiring action that you're doing. And you can also specify a reply by date. So I'm making this offer to the applicant, but they have 2 weeks to reply before I start making the offer to other applicants or the next suitable applicant. References. So usually when an applicant sends in a CV or resume, they're asked to provide references. This is where you capture that information. So the reference name, you can create it as free text. The relationship, company that person belongs to if it's applicable. And once I populate this information here, what I use is this insert button, and it inserts it in. So all right, I'll say previous manager, and I'll insert, and it comes down here. So allowing me to have multiple references attached to applicant John Doe. Now, in the reference name, which is the required part of this section, you also have the ability to put in notes. So if I used my same notes functionality throughout GP is what I would use here to create additional notes on the reference, because that is the record or the object at this point. I can attach documents, which would then allow me to attach a physical or a scan of a physical reference letter that was sent by this person. Okay, and you have that information in. Skills. So I had mentioned earlier skills and skill sets. Skills would be any any skill that the organization views as important or valuable to mention, that may be directly related to or indirectly related to the positions of the company and the task of the employees. They can be tracked, they can be grouped into skill sets, and they can be assigned to employees as existing skills that they have, and they can also be attached to training courses or training courses being scheduled as skills to be attained. It helps with your review sections when you're doing when the company is doing the appraisals, because then they can match what you have as to what you need based on your positions, and then use that as an assessing tool as to if they need to compensate you more, how you've been doing your assigned task, and analyze your job performance. So my employer, in this case my applicant, I can specify what skills they would be bringing to the table and if they fall within a particular skill set. So if I'm using any set of skill sets that have been predefined, I can add it here and say the skill in the skill set, there may be multiple lines. I can then check off which ones apply to John Doe, which ones he has attained already. And once I do that, that relationship is created. So I now have from my applicant, I have my references, my skills, any additional cost or any cost attached to hiring him or her. I have the educational background. I can then attach any tests that I need them to take or they have taken that are noteworthy. I can put in tests inside here. Now a test can be anything. It can be an eye test, a driving test, any test. It's all dependent on the organization that is viewed as important enough to be noted. My user defines. So in my extra fields, I'll be setting up extra fields. I can also set up my applicant user-defined fields or my application user-defined field, which is where I started off at before I came into this window. Once I specify in those user-defined fields what I want to use, it will show up in here. So let's move this across a bit. Applicant user-defined. Once I enable any of these, then it becomes available under this section here. So that's any information that I would like to track on my applicants that I do not see in my window here in GP, nor any of the other go-to windows, which are additional windows relating to the record that I have here. So let's go to work history. So I can then capture my work history information for my applicant inside this window. Now, once I do this, this is a very simple window. Who is the employer? And again, it's free text, so you put it in based on how it's been received on the person's resume or CV. Number of years experience, some things that are important would be the last wage. Positions, so I can have multiple positions if they were in the organization, the previous organization for a long time, and they had multiple organizations. I have positions. I have the ability here to capture each position, the wage, the compensatory period, so which works out to how frequently they were paid, if it's weekly, semi-monthly, which is like fortnightly, or monthly, right? And I can insert it here, so I can have all of that information captured, and then it's of course attached to my applicant. Now, when this applicant is or should this applicant be transferred to an employee, all of this information is moved across with the record automatically. Okay, so still on the applicant, some of the letters, and this falls under the section of showing you how Microsoft Office and Microsoft Dynamics link, as the letter writing section. So on all of my card windows, applicant, employees, vendor, customer, etc. throughout GP, I have this write letters. For my applicant, I have several application letters that have already been preset, and I do have the option of creating new ones here. So I can create a new letter, and I start off with a blank Word screen. I can edit an existing letter, which means I'm using one of the letters that already has been set in my system or I have created previously, and I'd like to make changes to it. I can delete a letter, I can rename a letter. So let's look at some of the letters that we have in the system. So an applicant letter. When an applicant sends their information in, if I need to correspond with them, it would be either to decline or to acknowledge the receipt of the application. Now, let's say I declined. Click next. I need to say who the letter is coming from, who has received it and is now communicating with the applicant. And once I click on that, my letter is generated in Word, and I can make again any changes I need to make further here. Now this letter should have your company logo, and any letterheads and stuff should be incorporated here. And it's going to pull information from the system, being the applicant, your information that you had specified, the date, which you can now edit, the company information, this is the company address, etc. here. And the letter is generated, and from this point I use normal Word functionality to communicate it further. So I can email this, I can print it and mail it out, and basically get the information to the employee or potential employee. Sorry, this is a decline. So the applicant. Right. Now I also have the option to use an offer letter if I've decided to make an offer to the employee, to the applicant. And since I have not I don't have that applicant available anymore. That's why I'm not seeing anybody here. But the task would be prepare an offer letter, prepare the offer letter, click next, select the applicant that you have decided to hire, click next, and it will follow the same functionality as writing any one of these letters. Yeah. All right. Put in your information and the letter is prepared. Right. So it says thank you for submitting. Our records have indicated that you have applied to position, and these are templated letters that come with Microsoft Dynamics GP, and like I said, you can create your own and add in your own templates or edit these templates. Yeah. Okay, now that pretty much covers it for applicants. Now my applicants will then move across to my employees, and depending on how much information you have captured from your applicants, you would have all of that information available as an employee. Of course, you need to put in your social security number or your national insurance number. You would definitely have to make sure that the division department positions are filled, namely the department and the position. That's most important. And your go-to section, so this button is the button you would use based on whatever window you're on to allow you to capture all the information that you need to capture for that record that you're looking at. So I'm looking at my employee. If I click on my go-to button, I can then start doing things like, okay, I need to record their attendance. I need to check their or add to their benefits and deductions, make amendments to their education, any grievances. I need to record it. So let's pull out things like, okay, I need to record their dependents. This is something that happens a lot. So let's say an employee had a new child or would like to include someone else as a dependent. You come in here, you specify the free text information for that person, which is already attached to the employee, and you save. Once it's populated up here, you do the same insert, so you can have multiple records or multiple lines of dependents per employee. Another noteworthy one is reviews, which is / appraisal. So I can come to my employee, I can set up my review date, select a review type. Let's set up the date, sorry. Review type. Yes, I do want to create one. And save, click on new save. Right. I need to specify that it's a production employee. Now, that production employee is simply my labeling the different types of reviews that I have set up in my system. So I selected production, and based on the production review type setup, it pulls my categories that I am going to review when I'm doing an interview, not an interview, an appraisal for this employee. It has my weighted factors set up, which will then give me my weighted score. And for each one of these categories, I can put additional notes, which it's going to be available to me, not to the employee to see. So me being the HR person or the department head, whoever is conducting the interview. So once I do this, this is me tracking the appraisal of this employee. Right. I'm going to discard this. Now again, I'm still on my employee tab. And from here, I can track things like training. So I would like to have this person partake in a particular training. I can set up the course, right? And in setting up my course, I will be able to have my course name. I can have my default instructor, location, course attached. The skills, these are the skills that would be attained by doing this course. So I can have them segmented into different sections or different phases. So these are all the things that we can mark them on. So I can say, okay, it's start date and end date for this section, etc. And once I track this information, it's attached then to my employees, and from then on, I can pull queries to see who has what skills, who attended what course. Okay. All right. Now, this is all still from the employee maintenance tab. Property. If my employees have company's property under their care, I can do the assignment of those properties here. So it's not available. So I need the employee number, which I got from the drop down. I can look at assigning any item, and I'm having fun with my items here. Okay, let's assign a cell phone. It's not available because it's already assigned to someone. Okay, so I'll use this because it's in. I have the camcorder assigned. It's assigned to this employee, and I can simply close off the window because once I've done that assignment, it's complete. I can assign multiple items to an employee. I of course need to pay attention to this checkbox, which is what I was not doing before. This is the in section. So in means it's in the inventory. It's available to assign. So I select and I have it assigned to my employee. And I can simply close off that screen. Okay. Unions. Once I have created my unions, if my organization has employees who are in unions, I can assign them here. I can assign them here to a union. I can, let's create one quick. All right. All right. If there's a contract number involved for the employee, I can have that information. I can populate it here. Effective dates. So being in a union, it's going to be important to the union and the employee and the organization by extension to capture contract numbers, effective dates of contracts, seniority dates for the employees, and union dues. So I can have that information here. It doesn't necessarily form any accounting basis for the organization, but it's information that you can report on. The union may request it, the employee may request it, and even the board of directors may be requesting this information from time to time. Okay. So I can capture this information, have it available to my system, and I can report on it later. Okay, So we spent some time on the employee and the applicants, and we have captured some information. So you've seen some of the things that you need to capture. I would like to move across in the interest of time to how we do some inquiries and reports. Now, under the inquiry section, you have the very basic. I want to look up an employee. I can pull it up and get all the information for that employee. That's a very ad hoc as you can get for reporting. However, I can get a little more detail. I can have some more fun. I may want to see a skills query. So if I have my query is created, I can create a query name if it's not there. Basic skills. I'm querying on a particular skill set. I must specify that. All right. So out of the pool of skill sets I have, I want to query forklift. And then I want to query employees, I want to query applicants, or I want to query both. So this is where capturing the information from your skills bank, being 2 banks here, comes in handy. So I'll say, okay, I have query. Now what happened is I did not have any employees who had this skill. So I went to applicants. So I'm pulling my applicants who have the skill of a forklift driver. So case in point, I need a forklift driver. Do I have any employees? I would have clicked on the employee section, query, and it will tell me none. I have none. Okay, I needed that bad that I need to hire somebody for it? Let's look in my applicants. Do I have any applicants? And then I'll see John Doe starring here saying, yes, I am the one who has it. You need to hire me. Right. Now, that's employees versus applicants, or I can do both. I'll still get the same result, basically querying, telling me, yes, John Doe, and is he an applicant or employee? I can see who he is. So from here, I know I need to go and take a look at John Doe and decide if I need to hire him or not, and how much I'm going to offer him, etc. So that's just information that would help you with quick decisions now. I have a need. Do I have the skills? Okay, where is the skill? Do I have access to it? How do I want to get it? Simple. And that came off of a query. Okay, now we do have attendance inquiry, which is very popular. So I can pull up any particular attendance transactions that I would have done in the past. This window mimics the attendance entry window. So what you'd be actually seeing is under the transactions, human resources, transaction entry, which is where you're going to record your employees' time taken. It's pretty much the same window you'll see in the query because you're actually pulling back up transactions in the query. So how I would record my leave transactions would be I would pull up an employee or pull up the employee. I would then pull the time code, and your time code would be things like sick leave, vacation, maternity, etc. Right? Let me see if I have one that Akman may have one. Right? So Akman has holidays, and he's taken holidays, and we'd like to now track that. My options here would be transaction type, hours used. So I take the date, the start date, and the end date of the time taken, and inside here, these fields are all connected. They're all reactive of each other. So if I wanted to say he took a half day holiday, I can put either 0.5 here, which would then work out to 4 hours, 240 minutes, 0.1 of a week, etc. So it doesn't matter which field I use inside here, they're all connected, they're all interactive. So whichever one works best for me, the person who's entering the leave at that point in time, is the one that I would use. I need to specify a reason. So it's vacation. And was it planned or unplanned? It was planned. Now from this list, I can specify planned, unplanned. I can also specify if it's approved or unapproved. Right, so it all depends on your organization. So let's say planned, and what I'll do here is say save. Right. I of course missed the batch. You need to put a batch ID in, and for argument's sake, I'm going to leave bonus. This is tied to payroll. So once I assign it to a batch, I can then save, which is the normal premise in GP. If you're going to save, you must save to a batch. If you're not saving to a batch, then you post immediately. Okay, based on my settings in HR in this environment, I need to post to a batch. So that's how you do a transaction for your leave for your employees. Okay, and that is the same screen that would come up if you do an attendance query, because you're actually querying a transaction. Now, most of you who have seen me do presentations before training know how much I love SmartList. So let's go to SmartList. There are a couple things to note with SmartList. And of course, SmartList is the search engine for Microsoft Dynamics GP. The HR and the payroll module in Microsoft Dynamics GP, they're closely linked. So if I need to look at an employee or pull SmartList for an employee, I actually need to go to the payroll section. The payroll section is where my employee tables are kept, regardless of if I'm entering it in the HR windows or not. They all flow back to the payroll tables. So if I need a list of all of my employees, I need to go under the payroll object. Okay, so let's see, what do we have under the human resource object? I have my applicants, because my applicants have no payroll implications at all, none. So they're purely human resources objects. So I have my applicants. I can do multiple searches and reports on my applicants. I have my applicants' education. I also have my employee benefit. Now my employee benefits are any benefit that I have set up for my employees that the company offers, such as group plans, health plans, medical plans, etc. Once I have my employees assigned to them, I can do a query in SmartList and pull it. Okay. And of course, normal SmartList functionality, I can create filters for my reports based on the fields that I have on the report or available to put on the report. I can pull those. I have 4 fields that I can use for filtering. I also have my maximum record specification that I can change. So if I know I have 5,000 employees and there's a strong possibility that my data returning would be more than 1,000, which is the default that comes with the system, I can increase it here and say OK, which regenerates my report, bringing in all the data based on the new maximum I've set. I can add columns or remove columns from any of the reports that I am using. So this is normal SmartList functionality. And I can create favorites by taking existing reports and editing it. So I would create a name, say who I want it visible to, and add it as a favorite or add it as a favorite and a reminder, which makes it come up in my home page under my to-do section or my report section. And The big winner behind Smart Lists, of course, is to export it to Excel. So I can export my report or my list to Excel. So something to definitely remember when you're doing Smart Lists for HR, when it comes to the employees, you need to go under the payroll section, which is where you would get transaction types for your payroll employees. You would get basic employee information. That's where it's pulling from the employee window, which is in the payroll tables. So from here, I'm able to add, so I can create reports relating to my employees. I may want to see their positions, everybody of a particular position. I may want to see everybody of a particular department. I may want to see things like additional fields that I've added, information based on that for my employees. You need to go under the payroll section to do that. Okay. Marital status, I'll just add that. So the report is refreshed. And then in SmartList, similar to Excel, I can filter by any column that I have here. So let's filter. I want to see all of the married employees. I have only 3 married employees. Single employees, and then we have a lot of employees who are NA, which most likely would mean that the information is not defined yet for that employee. So I can pull a smart list like that. I can sort by any of the columns, like I said. I can export to Excel or Word, or I can publish, especially if I have SharePoint. And I can print. I can also export by clicking on print, and I can export it to other file types. So I can do it as a text, tab, comma delimited, HTML files, XML data files, etc. So I have all of these options in SmartList. So SmartList, in one sentence, is the perfect place to do any sort of querying. It is even better than your query tab, query button, ribbon in Microsoft Dynamics GP. And then you have your reports. Now the reports work like this. Under my reports HR section, I have all of these objects that I can report on. Each one of these, and I'll just jump back a second just to make one statement. HR has the most reports of all of the modules in Microsoft Dynamics GP. So coming back forward again, each one of these have a host of reports under them. So what I did was, let's go under reports. So I'll do it from the home page here. We have human resources, we have applicant. In applicant, once I select or create an option, I'll say new, I can then run from a series of reports that have been already assigned to the applicant's report section. All right. Now, when I usually demonstrate HR and I show you the application color code, this is where you come in and you can pull a report based on the color code. Right? And just to give the effect, I'll show you exactly what I mean by human resources applicant, applicant. In my applications, I can use this color code section as a graphical indication internally on how we need to look at this applicant. So, and they're purely or totally customizable, up to you, the organization, as to how you want to interpret them. So I have the different colors that are available. They come with the system. I'm not able to add or delete. Right? And from here, once I have these specifications attached to my applicants, I can then come back to my report in my report options here, and I can actually pull a report based on color codes. I can build a report on cost notes, applicant cost. So we talk about that when we're looking at the applicant window. Several options for each one of these sections, and these sections, I'll go back here, would be under these sections I can pull reports for. So what you need to do is to go in and check, create some options, and these are reports, so they are not going to damage data. It's simply reporting. I'll see new here, and start looking at some of the reports that you have here. So I can look at report letters. That's probably not a good one to do. Enrollment by benefits. Okay, so I'm going to sort by employees, leave the legends as they are. They come predefined. If I needed a range of employees, I can do that. If not, I'll leave it and all employees would pull up. Normal GP practice, you check your destination to make sure that it's going to screen, or if you have decided to send it to printer, or you can send it to a file with the following options as file types. Okay. Also, when you are doing reports, forms, printing checks, printing invoices, etc. throughout GP generally, you would always have the report type as standard or template. So standard is going to pull your normal GP report out of the box, editable by report writer, as opposed to template. Template is going to use most likely Word or some other external tool, even VBA tools that would generate the reports. So standard is in GP, template is more flexible, and it most likely will pull from your Office suite, or if you have edited a particular type of report and you have it as a template coming with an external source, you'll get it under template, right? So here I have my template for this kind of report. It can pull it up in Word. Okay, so why I mention that is because I've had clients who've had the same report, but it looks in a different way. What you need to do is when you're pulling the report option and you're pulling the report destination, or you're specifying the report destination, ensure that you're using the right report type to get the report that you want. So I'm going to use my GP report, and I'm going to say I want it to come in screen only, and I'll say OK, and I'll print this. Okay, I need to save my options before it prints. And this is my basic GP report out of the box that I am generating here based on my benefit plans and all of my employees enrolled in each benefit plan. Okay, so I have my 401k, I have all my employees inside there, I have my column showing what their social security numbers are, what the benefit amount is, so that's the plan amount, the cost, company's cost, employee and employer, their contribution based on percentages. Now this is all based on how I've set up my benefits, right? Now, like I said, this is a Microsoft Dynamics GP report, which means I have the ability to go into Report Writer and make my changes if I needed to. Okay, so let's come back here. Let's go back. That was just a tease. If I have any developers or very technical people in the audience, yes, you do have the option to go in and make those changes. Okay, now we have touched on how you would capture information, especially from the applicant side and the employee side, how you'll be able to look at inquiring on some of those things. Some of the most important sections that you need to maintain. And I'd also like to show you all how, or touch on how you can bring in data, a mass amount, into your organization. So let's say you're doing an implementation, which we would usually be the ones responsible for bringing in the data for you. Let's say you had some changes that you'd like to make. You need to be familiar with, one, Integration Manager, Now, Integration Manager would allow you to integrate specific information into different aspects of GP. One of the objects that come with the tool is your employees. And even here, you would notice that it says integrate payroll employees. That is, of course, as I mentioned before, payroll information is the table, or those are the tables that host your employee data, master data. So employees, so I can bring in my employees. Some of the things that you would be able to bring in would be the ID, the class, if you're using it, first name, last name, etc. Basic master information, you must have that in. Department, you can assign them to department. So this is where it becomes really helpful. If you, let's say whether you're using HR or not currently, and you have let's say you acquired a new group of companies and you need to incorporate them into HR, you can bring in that list of employees, but these are some of the things that you need to have in your template. So you would have a template, you'd populate the template, we can bring this in, run the integration, and it comes into Microsoft Dynamics GP under your Human Resources Employee tab, right? So it pretty much populates everything in this window. That's what the purpose of that integration would do. And again, if we have technical people on the session, there are possibilities, or you do have options to do table imports. Now, under your table imports, the thing to remember is that you're updating one table at a time. So it is not recommended that you try to bring in employees through table import. If you wanted to add existing employees, so this is after you've already brought them into Integration Manager, but you forgot to assign them to a department, this would be a good option to use. So you would create a spreadsheet that has employee ID, department code. And in my employee ID department code, I would be able to say, of course, you do have some definitions that you have to create here. You have to say where the source file is, what type the source file it is. You need to say which destination table you're going to be pulling the information to. Okay. Well, let's use a payroll. All right. So you need to say where you're going to send the information. And once you specify that, then you create your link, which is your mapping, between your source file. So I'm pulling column A into this field. Once you do that and you click import, it generally, once it's set up properly, you have no problem. It runs really fast. It runs faster than Integration Manager actually, because the validation, so this is the drawback, the validation is minimal. So it's usually meant for very simple, straightforward updating of tables. And whenever you're doing it, you must pay attention to the fact that you're updating one table. So if your data needs to be related in multiple tables, then you will have to do several of these table imports, which is when you need to consider going back to Integration Manager, and instead of doing an insert, you do an insert and update for your options. Okay, instead of insert only, you do an insert and update. So that way I can pull in my employee information again using the same one we've seen before with all of this information, and it would insert the new ones and update information on the old ones. So it all depends on what type and the volume of data that you're looking to incorporate into Microsoft Dynamics or import into Microsoft Dynamics GP. Okay, so for the non-technical people, I know that might have gone over your head, but I think the premise you would have still gotten, the general idea. For the technical people, it's something to think about. You do have those options. And I think that would bring me to what I wanted to show today. And I thank you very much for your time. I am looking at my chat for questions. Right, so I saw Gregory wanted to see attendance. I touched on that briefly. So your attendance section is one, you need to set up your attendance, and that is here. By setting up your attendance, what does that mean? You need to set up your accruals. So I need to first make sure that my current year is set up, the last day accrued is set up. Now, even if you're moving into a new system, you need to put this in, and this would be the close off. The last day accrued would be the last day of the last year. The current year is the current year you would put in. You need to specify number of days in a week that the organization uses as work days, the number of hours in a day. You specify your next transaction number. If it's a new system, it's going to be 1. If you have been tracking previous numbers before, it's going to be what your last number was plus 1. Yes, I want to update my vacation calendar, and under options is where you get to specify the different reason types for your leave and the different type of your leave. And this is where I mentioned a couple minutes ago, where you have planned and unplanned, and you can also insert things like approved and unapproved. This is where you would do that. Coming back to my setup, or let's use the window here a little bit. Right. So coming back to my setup, under attendance, you have your period. So your accrual period. That's really important. Very. You have several options of which you can use. So whichever fits your organization best. So if you're monthly paid, your complement of employees are monthly paid, and you'd like to accrue things on a monthly basis, then I need to have my monthly period set up here. So I have my start date. So I'll first have my year. These dates will all become blank. And once I put in my first start date, you'll notice that it flows automatically down to the end of the period. All right. Inside here is where I can come and monitor also what periods have been accrued. All right. And once I have this set up, I can move on to the next section where I set up my accruals. Now my accruals is where I put in my rule definitions as to how my different leaves would get approved. So accrued. Sick, I will accrue by, you have to decide. The most common one, of course, is pay period, which falls for like annual. I have a post one, I have interval, which is days, and I can accrue hourly. Yeah, let's go, right, yeah. So number of hours to accrue per period. I have 80 hours per year, maximum 80 hours per year, available so far 77 hours, all right? I have my accrual period. I have it accruing on a monthly basis within the annual period. So I have it here. And then based on time codes. So time codes also need to be included or set up when you're setting up your accruals. What are your time codes? Your time codes, again, are your sick time, your normal salary, normal wages, maternity leave, all of these. So your sick time, usually coincides with the type of leave that you want to set up. So I have sick. I would usually have my sick time codes here. Okay, I may even have maternity under that attached to sick. So it all depends on your organization, but your time codes are the different types of leave or different types of paid and unpaid sections that your employees can take. Okay, so we set up the accrual, so you need to specify this for each time code, and you create your accrual schedule if you need to. So based on the previous setup, this gets automatically populated for you, and you can create your start date to the end date for this rule.